I can still hear the sound of the wind that used to dance through the tall grass outside my window. It sang like the memory of something I once believed would last forever. That wind carries the voices of my past, laughter, promises, and one name that still echoes after all these years, Daniel Crow. When I was a young girl, before the creases of time marked my skin, I thought life was a wide open road with no wrong turns. Our village sat by the river, where evenings smelled of pine smoke and sweet corn roasting on open fires. I remember walking barefoot along the dusty path that led to the old mill, where Daniel used to work with his father. He would tip his hat when he saw me, his grin shy and crooked, and I'd feel my chest flutter like a trapped bird. He wasn't the loud or boastful kind. Daniel had quiet hands, the kind that built things and fixed things, the kind that could hold you steady without words. Every girl in the village noticed him, but he always said good morning to me first. Sometimes he'd walk me home after choir practice, carrying my basket of herbs, just to have an excuse to stay near. My best friend Nokomis would tease me relentlessly. "Ayasha," she'd laugh, "you're glowing like the sunrise every time he looks your way." She had the kind of beauty people didn't forget, dark braids, quick wit, eyes full of mischief. We were sisters in all but blood. I trusted her with everything, my secrets, my dreams, my heart. I never thought trust could turn into a wound. That summer, the air felt alive. Daniel began talking about leaving for the city, about work and opportunities. He said he wanted to save enough to buy land, to build a small house near the river. One evening, when the sun sank low and the cicadas hummed like distant drums, he walked me home after the harvest dance. We stopped by the willow tree where the river curved. The world was quiet except for the rippling water. He looked at me, really looked, and said, "Ayasha, when I come back, will you wait for me?" I couldn't answer at first. My throat tightened, and all I could do was nod. He smiled, brushed a strand of hair from my face, and whispered, "Then it's settled." That was the moment my heart made its promise. I believed waiting was easy when love felt that certain. When I reached home, Nokomis was waiting on the porch, grinning like she already knew. I told her everything, the walk, the question, the promise. She hugged me tightly, but I felt something stiff in her arms, a hesitation she tried to hide. "I'm happy for you," she said softly. "You deserve a good man." For days afterward, she asked questions, too many questions. What exactly did he say? When was he leaving? Did he mention writing? I thought she was just excited the way best friends are. I never noticed the small cracks forming between us. The morning Daniel left, the whole town gathered to see the workers off. He looked back only once, his eyes finding mine across the crowd. I raised my hand, and he smiled, just a small, certain smile that told me everything would be fine. I held that smile like a prayer. Weeks turned into months. The first letter never came. Then the second. The road stayed empty. I told myself he must be busy, that men in the city didn't have time to write about feelings. Every sunrise, I'd sweep the porch, pretending I wasn't waiting. Every sunset, I'd sit by the willow, pretending I wasn't lonely. Nokomis came often, bringing soup or gossip, always with a tone of pity hiding under her laughter. "Maybe he's forgotten how to write," she'd say. "Maybe he found a city girl who can keep up with him." I'd smile faintly, though the words cut deeper than I let her see. One evening she came with news, her voice trembling like she hated to say it. Ayasha, someone told me Daniel's getting married. A city woman, they say she's the daughter of a merchant. She reached for my hand as if she were comforting me, but I couldn't feel anything. My body went still. The world blurred around me. I heard the sound of the river in my head, but it was louder now, angry. I asked her once, "Are you sure?" She nodded, eyes shining like she might cry too. I believed her. I shouldn't have, but I did. That night, I took the scarf Daniel had given me, the one embroidered with little blue beads along the edge, and walked to the river. The moonlight painted silver paths on the water. I let the scarf fall and watched it drift away until it vanished into the current. I didn't cry. I told myself strong women don't cry over broken promises. But when I lay in bed, the silence pressed down so heavy I thought it would crush me. My heart felt like something had been scooped out of it. From that day, I stopped going to the willow tree. I stopped listening for footsteps on the road. I stopped believing that love was enough. Nokomis stayed close, always comforting, always saying, "You'll find someone better." I didn't know then that she was the reason my world had cracked in the first place. Looking back now, I see all the signs. The way her laughter changed when Daniel's name came up, the way her eyes followed him that last night of the dance. But love makes us blind to the shadows closest to us. Sometimes I wonder if she hated me for being loved first. Or maybe she just wanted what I had, not realizing that love taken by deceit can never fill an empty soul. I was 17 when I made that promise under the willow. I am 78 now, sitting by a different window, telling you this story because I still remember what it feels like to believe in forever. Tell me, if you were me back then, would you have waited too? Years passed, and the seasons turned with cruel indifference. The river froze, thawed, and bloomed again, but nothing grew inside me anymore. I learned to move through life as if my heart had become just another bone in my chest, something that worked quietly without feeling. I married once, long after Daniel was gone. A man named Eli, kind and patient, someone who deserved far more than what little I could give. I tried to love him. I really did. He worked the fields and built us a small home near the northern edge of the village. Every evening, he'd light a lantern before I even asked, saying, "You shouldn't have to sit in the dark." But love built from ashes never burns as warm. I'd sit on our porch sometimes and think of Daniel's laugh, of the way his eyes used to soften when he looked at me, and guilt would creep in like a ghost. Eli sensed it, though he never said a word. He'd just sigh, take my hand, and whisper, "You don't have to say sorry, Ayasha." Nokomis visited less often after I got married. She'd bring small gifts for the house, a hand-woven mat, a jar of honey, always smiling that same practiced smile. Her husband came with her once. When I saw him step off the wagon, my breath caught in my throat. It was Daniel. The world seemed to tilt. My vision blurred for a moment, and I thought I might faint. Daniel looked older, broader shoulders, a shadow of gray near his temples, but those eyes were the same eyes that had promised me forever, the same voice that had asked me to wait. He looked at me like a man standing at the edge of two worlds. And then, without hesitation, he turned to Nokomis, touched her shoulder, and said, "Ayasha, this is my wife." For a heartbeat, the earth went silent. Not even the wind dared to move. My mouth went dry. and all I could do was nod. Nokomi smiled, her eyes avoiding mine. I excused myself, pretending to fetch water, but my hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the bucket. I heard their voices behind me, light, domestic, ordinary, like nothing had ever happened between us, like our story had been erased by time, rewritten by betrayal. That night I sat awake beside Eli as he slept, his breathing slow and even. I stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks, wondering how people could live so calmly after shattering someone else's heart. The next morning, Nokomi's found me alone in the garden. She said softly, "I didn't mean for it to happen this way." I wanted to scream, to ask her how she could have looked me in the eye all those months while stealing the one man who made me believe in forever. But instead, I said nothing. I just stared at her until she turned away. Later, I learned the truth. She had written Daniel after he left, pretending to be me. Told him I'd met another man, that I was engaged, that I wished him well. He had written back, not once, but many times. But she intercepted the letters before they reached me. He believed her lies. And when he came home, broken by the thought that I'd moved on, she comforted him, told him love was cruel, that she too had been left behind. In his grief, he married her, and I spent years thinking he'd forgotten me. I remember standing by the river one evening after learning it all, watching the water twist and shimmer under the fading light. My reflection looked like a stranger, a woman with hollow eyes and too many stories behind them. I whispered, "Why, Nokomis, why?" But the river only carried my voice away. Time didn't heal it. It only softened the edges, dulled the sting, until the pain became part of who I was. People think heartbreak fades, but it doesn't. It just learns to breathe quietly beside you. I raised children, lost parents, grew old, all while that ache stayed tucked inside like an unhealed bruise. Sometimes in dreams Daniel still appeared, standing by the willow, waiting, smiling. I'd wake up with tears on my pillow, whispering his name into the darkness. Years later, after Eli passed, I went to visit the graveyard by the church. The air smelled of wet earth and marigolds. I saw a new headstone beside my parents, Nokomi's crow. She had passed during the winter. I stood there for a long time, unsure of what to feel, and then I saw it. Another headstone, older, worn by rain, sitting right next to hers. Daniel Crow. For a moment I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened until it hurt to stand. I knelt beside his grave and ran my fingers across his name. Beneath the moss I found something small tucked into the soil. A folded note sealed with wax so fragile it cracked at my touch. It was addressed to me. My hands shook as I opened it. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded, but the words, oh, the words still carried his voice. He wrote, "Ayasha, if you ever find this, know that I never stopped loving you. I only married because I was told you had. Every day I wished it had been you at my side. I looked for your face in every crowd until the day I died." I pressed that letter to my heart, and the years fell away. I was 17 again, standing under the willow, hearing him ask if I would wait. I whispered through tears, "I did, Daniel. I waited." The wind stirred, gentle as a hand on my cheek, and for a moment I thought I heard his voice in the rustle of the leaves. I stayed there until sunset, the light bleeding gold across the stones. I thought of Nokomis, my sister, my betrayer. and for the first time I didn't feel anger, only sorrow. Because she spent her life living a lie and I spent mine mourning one. Some people think love stories end with weddings or graves, but the truth is, some love stories never end at all. They just live quietly inside the heart, waiting to be heard again. If you've ever lost someone you were meant to have forever, if you've ever loved so deeply that time couldn't erase it, tell me, what would you have done differently? I went home that evening with Daniel's letter tucked safely inside my shawl, as if I were carrying a piece of his soul against my chest. Every step back to the cottage felt like walking through all the years we lost, each one pressing down on me with the weight of memories I could no longer change. When I reached home, the fire had burned low. I sat by it, unfolded the letter again, and read every word until the paper trembled in my hands. His handwriting was shaky near the end, the ink smudged in places where perhaps his tears had fallen. It was as if he had written it knowing he wouldn't have the strength to send it, but hoping the wind might one day deliver it to me. I wondered what his final years were like. Did he ever sit by the window and think of me? Did he ever call my name in his sleep? Or did Nokomis keep him so busy pretending to be happy that he forgot to grieve what we lost? Sometimes when I look back, I realize that love isn't always stolen by time. Sometimes it's buried under lies, waiting for truth to dig it out, even if it takes a lifetime. That night, I couldn't sleep. The moonlight spilled through the window, painting silver across the floor. I held Daniel's letter close, whispering to him as if he were listening from the other side. I would have waited forever, you know, I said, even if it meant dying with your name still on my lips. And for a brief moment I felt warmth, a stillness so deep it felt like forgiveness, or maybe peace. The next morning I visited Nokomis's grave again. I brought 2 flowers, one for her, one for Daniel. Standing there, I spoke softly, not out of anger, but exhaustion. Nokomis, I began, you took something from me I could never replace, but I've carried that wound for too long. You loved him in your way, and he loved me in his. Maybe there was enough of him to give both of us a little piece of happiness. I paused, tracing her name carved in stone. I forgive you, I whispered, not because you deserve it, but because I can't carry this anymore. I looked toward Daniel's grave then, tears clouding my vision. And you foolish gentleman, you believed her lies because your heart was too kind to question them. But I forgive you too. We were both just children who didn't know that promises can die, even when love doesn't. For the first time in decades, my heart felt light. The ache was still there. It always would be. But it no longer hurt to breathe. It was like the air had shifted, and the ghosts I'd been living with finally loosened their grip. That night I took out my old box of letters and keepsakes. Inside were bits of my life, a ribbon from my wedding day, a faded photo of my children, a small pressed flower from my mother's garden. I placed Daniel's letter among them. It belonged there, with all the other things that shaped me. Sometimes when people grow old, they forget their stories. But not me. Every wrinkle on my hands carries a memory. Every scar holds a whisper. I've lived through enough heartbreak to know that love doesn't always end where we think it does. Years later, when my granddaughter found me sitting by the fire, she asked, "Grandma, did you ever fall in love?" I smiled faintly and said, "Once, long ago." But love, my dear, isn't always kind. Sometimes it's a lesson dressed as a miracle. She frowned, curious. Did he make you happy? I looked into the flames and whispered, for a time, he made me believe happiness was forever. She hugged me then, and for a fleeting moment, I imagined it was Daniel's warmth I felt again, that same steady comfort that used to make the world feel right. But life moves in circles. Seasons fade, generations rise, and the stories of our hearts become just echoes in the halls of memory. I often sit on my porch now, wrapped in my shawl, watching the sunset melt into the hills. I can almost see him there sometimes, young again, smiling, waiting by that willow tree. It's strange, isn't it? How love can outlive the people who carried it. How it can whisper across decades, long after voices are gone. Sometimes I talk to him when no one's around. Daniel, I say, I got your letter, my love. I just wish it hadn't come so late. The wind always answers softly, brushing my hair like a gentle hand. Maybe that's his way of saying he's sorry. Maybe it's the universe trying to tell me that some love stories don't need endings, just peace. And to those who are listening to me now, wherever you are, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever waited for a promise that never came, don't let it turn your heart to stone. Let it teach you that love, no matter how painful, is proof you've lived deeply. Because I've learned that the heart doesn't break once. It breaks over and over until all that's left is truth. And my truth is this. I loved him. I lost him. But I never stopped believing that love in some quiet way remembers us all. So if you've ever waited for someone who never returned, tell me, would you still wait knowing the ending? Or would you walk away to save yourself the years? If my story touched your heart tonight, stay with me, like, share, and subscribe. Not just for me, but for every soul who's ever loved in silence and lost without reason. Because maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there, our stories find their way home, the way his letter finally found mine.